This is one of the most critical elements of being a writer, trying to figure out how to handle revisions and comments and edits with elegance and grace. When we work in a teamwork atmosphere, whether that's with editorial clients or with content marketing clients or content strategy clients, copywriting clients, we need to make sure that we're listening to our clients, we're getting that direct feedback, we're understanding what things to put in and what things to change, but we need to be able to tell what's helping and what's hurting the piece, and then we also need to figure out when enough is enough and kind of get out of revision land and either drop the client or figure out how we're keeping to have to do all of these different edits. So we want to make sure that we have this good balance. And we're going to go over several different steps to handle feedback and edits the right way and revisions, but we're also going to make sure that we're kind of sifting through the right pieces. So I'm Mandy Ellis, and I built a six-figure freelance writing business, and I help other freelance writers build high earning businesses they adore without the burnout, overwhelm, and stress. And we're just going to jump right into it because I think number one is the thing that happens the most. You need to actually ask for feedback. So, what I end up having is sometimes writers who don't get any feedback for a long, long time. Then they have a client who ends up giving them feedback and they're like butthurt about it, which used to be me. I used to not get feedback and I'd be like, great, everything I've done is great. Like, I don't need to do anything. And then when you get feedback, you're like, oh no, I'm the worst writer ever. Everything is terrible. That's not true. It's just that maybe your previous clients didn't know how to give feedback or they weren't able to kind of meet you at that level. But now you have a new client who can see kind of the cracks in your work. We all have cracks and pitfalls and mistakes and little habits that we do all the time in our work, right? So one of my things is I end up writing a lot of run-on sentences, as you might be able to tell from these videos. I like to talk in kind of long, comma heavy or semicolon heavy sentences. And it just ends up creating these big blocky paragraphs. So I have these writing things that happen, these little writing ticks. Everybody has them. Some people forget words. Some people add ing and when they mean to say something else. There's all these things that happen. So you kind of need to know that. But also remember that when you're getting feedback, that's important. These are learning opportunities, and we want to be learners as writers. You can't just write something and then be like, I've done it. That never happens. Whether you were writing a book or an article or you're writing a case study, if you're finding the right clients, they should be able to give you good feedback. And then you should be able to get to a place where you have very little feedback because you've learned what their expectations are. But especially when you're working with magazines, people who know great content, editors who know exactly what you should be creating, they're much more on the ball than your business clients in terms of grammar and punctuation and all that stuff. I have found that my best edits have come from editors at magazines. They're the ones who you're really learning from the best. Sometimes they make mistakes too, and sometimes it's really frustrating when you have like four different editors on your doc. But if you can work more with magazine clients early on to kind of improve your writing process and get that feedback, I think that is really important. If you're working with a lot of business clients as a copywriter or content marketing writer or content strategist, well, I guess less for content strategists, but you need to ask just to learn. We need to make sure that we're asking for feedback. We're showing that we're open to feedback. And this really helps create a good back and forth relationship. And it builds that bond with your client because you're open to their thoughts. You're not just like, I wrote everything. Don't look at it. It's fine. Move on. We want to make sure we're actually showing that we're open to feedback. And I know that sometimes I used to get really nervous about asking for feedback because it meant that I did it wrong or it wasn't perfect. And it's just not true. Your version of perfect is nobody else's version of perfect. And you don't really want to get in a place where you send something and you never hear anything. It's just radio silence. That's something where, it's just, it can be not a good fit, or it ends up being something where you never get any feedback and you're just like, well, is this right? Like, are we doing this? If you know kind of like your general process, when you're getting edits or when you're getting comments, that publishing time frame that your client hopefully shared with you on your initial call, that kind of helps you get this idea of like how this is going, and not getting edits or not hearing from them might be an issue. But building those long-term relationships, keeping clients happy and doing great work really means that you are open to edits and feedback and revisions, and that you work on handling them well over time. Initially it's going to hurt a lot and you're going to be like, but I'm trying so hard. And I always kind of remember this idea where I worked on this article that took weeks and weeks and weeks. It just took a lot of research and a lot of time. And I sent it in and I ended up having to do all of these edits. And I was just like, man, I spent so much time on this thing, like weeks and weeks of research and interviews and editing and all this stuff. And then I get all these comments back from my editor, and it just reminded me that the time you spend doesn't matter if you didn't do it right. So you have to kind of keep that in mind. Like, no matter how much time you spend, yes, we can wallow over that for a little bit. Oh, I spent all this time. But what you have to remember is like, you still have to do it right, which means client expectations, or you have to kind of fix things with edits. So we really want to be open to that process. And it is a process. It's a process of opening yourself up to being able to handle kind of rejection and comments and changes. But it's really important to understand who gives you the best edits so you can grow as a writer. Number two, whenever we're working with our client, you want to kind of like, if you're feeling frustration or you want to fume or vent, do that to another writer, do that to someone else. Don't do that to your client. Make sure that you're never really releasing the fury of how upset you are with the revisions on your clients, because that is just a recipe for disaster. There's plenty of times where I have been upset about a client or edits or having to redo something that took a lot of time, and I release that other ways besides on my client. Remember that you always want to have a good back and forth with your client. You don't want to just like unleash the wrath on them because of the feedback and edits. But if there's something that you see in there that you disagree with, go ask them. Ask them about that. Why are they doing it, or why this makes sense, or maybe you were thinking this, and ask for clarification and ask questions, because good clients and good editors will tell you, hey, this is what you should do, or this follows the format, or I think this is unclear. So if you're confused about something, ask for some clarification. Or sometimes if it's a lot of edits, hop on a call to kind of walk through them to see if you missed the mark, or like how you can get back on the ball. But really kind of getting into that kind of back and forth with your client can help. You can kind of see how their mind works, and you can see where they were thinking of going, and where you might have went off the path, or where you made a change and you should have not, and all that stuff. But you really want to make sure that when you go back and make these changes, that you're getting clarification, you're getting the why or the how from your editor or your client. But anytime you make updates, you should do that as well. You should tell your editor, hey, I changed this because da 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 da. So let's say your editor or your client made a change, and you were like, ooh, not good. And you need to tell them why. Don't just change it and move on. Leave them a comment and say, here's why I changed it. Here's what I did. Here's what I'm thinking, so that they can kind of see what you're doing. And that way it opens it up. It opens up the conversation rather than you just changing it with track changes and moving on. Number three, whenever you're taking feedback, take the good stuff and leave the rest. There will be plenty of clients who want to give you lots of feedback and tell you what to do. That is not good stuff. This has happened to me. This has happened to my Runway and my Wealth Lab students, where they end up with clients who make the stuff worse. Like, you go in and you see what got published or what's about to be published, and the content looks worse. So you can go in and say, hey, you ruined it. Don't say that. But you can go in and say, hey, I'm thinking that maybe we want to change it to this or change these things. But sometimes your client is dead set on it. If they're making the piece worse, don't use it in your portfolio. If you're not proud of it as a clip, don't use it. But there are editors and clients who will give you amazing, wonderful feedback. Take that. If there's other stuff that where your work is getting fucked up or messed up, just leave that alone. For me, I really like to start learning like which edits that I can see are making the work better and which ones are really kind of dragging it down. So we want to be helping the work, not hurting. So, for example, I had a piece where I had a client who was making it like I was writing at like this level and they were writing at this level. So there was a very clear distinction between like my paragraphs or my stuff and theirs. Like, it was very clear that we were at two different levels, and they thought it sounded good because they were like fixing it, but it sounded, like it was just broken. The whole thing didn't make any sense. So you really want to be careful about being able to distinguish between those things. And like I said, if it turns out that they end up publishing something that's confusing or not good, don't use it as a sample. But when you find an editor or a client who does a really good job of noticing your issues and your ticks and your mistakes, really try to get feedback from them. Really take a lot of their good stuff, kind of implement that in your work going forward and kind of pay attention to it. It really helps you get better as a writer. Number 4 here, you want to make sure that you're setting expectations. So you are setting expectations around feedback or revisions, or who's giving comments from the very beginning. I like to put this in my contract. So for me, in my contract, it says I'll write till you're happy, because I typically ask a lot of questions of my clients in the beginning, and I'm really good at identifying the right clients for me. So I may do one round of revisions. I mean, or maybe two, but I've never had something really grow out of control. If you had clients where they're asking for like 25 revisions, we got to clear something up here. So I think when we're setting those expectations, if you want to put rounds of revisions in your contract, however many, 2 or 3, do that. For me, it's like I ask for a lot of questions. I ask for examples. If they don't have an example, I provide one and say, what about this? So I'm always working off of something that they like or something that makes sense. And I also filter out my clients a lot on calls. So I'm getting on clients who I can more trust their feedback and more trust that we're on the same path and we look at content the same way. And they either like my clips or we're on the same path. I think that really helps reduce the feedback and the revisions. But if you're worried about it, you can put that in your contract. But I would also define in your initial client call who's doing the revisions. Is it just, Steve, or is it like Steve and 6 other people, so that we can kind of know what's going on? Because the more hands there are in the honeypot, the more issues we end up having. Because everybody, once you ask someone for their thoughts, they're going to give all their thoughts. So you want to make sure you know from the very beginning, from the time of the initial call, like who's reviewing it, how does that work, and that you can make a distinction on how you want to set up your contract for revisions. And if you want to know kind of that contract onboarding process, I would grab my free seasoned veteran cheat sheet. You can go to mandyellis.com/cheat sheet, and I will walk you through several steps of onboarding. So we have contracts, of course, but there's other steps in onboarding that we need to cover. And if you want to kind of pre-filter your potential clients for the ones who will give you good feedback and revisions, grab that cheat sheet so you can get the questions to answer in your LinkedIn and website to attract those right top dollar diamond clients. You can grab it at mandyellis.com/cheat sheet. Number 5, if you're ever confused about anything, ask questions. Worst case, get on a call with your client. But most of the time, if you are confused about something, leave comments in the doc, ask more information. If there's something that your, client changed that was a messed up source, or they misquoted someone, ask the question, or, tell them like, here's the quote, paste it in. But ask questions. I think a lot of writers are afraid to ask questions because by the time you're getting to feedback and the time you're getting to edits and comments, they're like, you should already know this, right? They come from clients who are like, you should already know this, and you made mistakes. And they think that they're supposed to have it all figured out. But questions are showing that you're curious and interested in the process, and you're driving towards making it better. So asking questions is an engagement curiosity piece versus being like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing, and I'm asking questions because I don't know what's going on. We want to take the tactic of asking very specific questions, and you're directing them towards comments they left, edits, things that you're confused about. If you have a lot of those things, get on a call and kind of listen to their thoughts and listen to them go through the doc. I think that kind of helps. But really, I think don't be afraid of asking questions. And if you have a client who's annoyed that you're asking questions, that is not your client. If you're trying to make the thing better, then you should definitely be asking questions. And then the last thing here is number 6, your best clients over the years. So in the years to come, in the years past, ask those clients for feedback. Those best clients of yours who you were on the same page, you are going towards the same goals, they understood your work, ask them for feedback, because there are great clients who will never give you feedback unless you ask them. And they'll be like, "Oh yeah, you always do this thing, but I delete it." And you're like, "I didn't even know I did that." So, I for me, every single writer, including me, I have a set number of editors, or I have a set number of clients where I'm like, I know that they give me good feedback. I know they catch the good stuff. I know these are mistakes I've made, and they do a really good job at it. So you want to make sure that you kind of find those people and build relationships, and you get feedback from them. You ask for feedback from them, and it really helps. It helps improve your writing, improve the quality of your work. improve your ability to handle feedback. And like I said, every single writer ends up having these little ticks, these little things that we do, these little like like mistakes that we make. And you just have to kind of know what those are. And a lot of times when you have these good editors or good clients, they'll point them out, and then you can start, improving your work by removing those things. But if you ask those clients, those best clients, for feedback, that's really the goal. That's really the stuff where, like, I've had clients where they didn't give me any feedback until I asked. And they were just like, yeah, we like your work, but there's like a couple little things. And you want to know those things because that improves your writing skills in the future, and it helps you watch for stuff. It helps you pay attention. And I think especially when we're handling feedback in revisions, and there's a lot of stuff that can make us feel like imposters or self-doubt, or we feel bad about our work, just knowing that there's people you respect and trust giving you some feedback, I think helps, versus like people who are like shitting all over your document with like red marker. So I think asking your best clients for feedback is really, really helpful. I think this is the last piece that really is relationship building, that you're open and you're interested and you're curious and you're learning. Those are really great qualities that freelance writing clients love to see when they work with you. So I hope that this has been helpful, and I hope you kind of put this into practice when you're doing your feedback and revisions. And remember, don't take it personally. This is just part of the process, but we have to get feedback, comments, and revisions. We have to do that stuff so that we can become better writers. So I hope this was helpful, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.